Right now, during this tax season, more than 1 million taxpayers, that's 1 million taxpayers, are having their tax returns prepared overseas. Most of them don't know it, and all of them are at risk of having their information, having their identity stolen and their bank accounts robbed. I'm also the chairman of a New Hampshire accounting firm which considered outsourcing work to India. We traveled to India and held more than 60 hours of face-to-face meetings with outsourcing companies, both large and small. We were surprised at the lack of adequate security at all of them, so we kept our work in-house. There's no amount of potential profit that's worth risking our clients' confidential information. Americans ought to know when their taxes are being outsourced and sent abroad. Today, without these regulations, information on outsourced returns is not safe, and the million Americans who are at risk don't even know who they are. How many of these million citizens want their taxes done overseas? I know I've talked to quite a few people, and not a single person is in favor of it. In fact, they're all surprised. They say, "Are you kidding me? I didn't know that, and that's my personal information." That's the dirty little secret of outsourcing. It doesn't happen to Californians because they have laws that are very similar to these proposed regulations, which protect them from sneaking personal information overseas. Taxpayers in the other 49 states need the same protections. When I told one client about tax outsourcing, his response was, "But my W-2 is my financial soul." Now, why would he say that? He doesn't want a stranger in another country to see his name, his address, and Social Security number. Well, he goes into a tax preparer shop, whether it's a CPA, an enrolled agent, or another preparer. And those folks right now, this very day, are extremely busy. They're working very long hours. They're unlikely to go home and see their families much, and they're probably working weekends also. And they've been told that if they take the tax return data, the W-2s and whatnot from their clients, put them in a scanner, and post that information on the Internet on a private site owned by the outsourcers, that the next day they'll have a tax return prepared for them in India, ready to review and to sign. That seems a very reasonable way to getting around this overwork stress that they're under right now. So what happens in India? The first step of preparing the return is to organize the input documents from the client, things like W-2s, 1099s, K-1s, all the paperwork that the client brings. Inside of the outsourcers are departments called bookmarking departments. The first step is that a bookmarker takes all of this information and electronically sorts it in the order that it needs to be entered into the tax return. But it's not just a bookmarker, though, that's going to sort the W-2 along with the rest of the papers. There's also a quality checker and a supervisor in that department that reviews all those papers in the order that they were placed in to make sure that they're right. So before the tax return is even started, 3 people have already seen the client's information, including what you see here on the W-2. Now, after bookmarking, another set of people actually work on the return. They start by entering the name, address, Social Security number, email, telephone numbers, date of birth, all the client's proprietary information as part of the tax return software program. And again, just like with bookmarking, it's not just the accountant that enters this information. It's also the quality checker, and it's also the supervisor that does that as well. This is the ideal profile for identity theft. So far, 6 people have seen this information. We know people enjoy e-filing because they get their refunds fast. Now, most of the taxpayers this year are e-filing. If they do so and they're getting a refund, on the bottom of their 1040, see we have at the top their name and Social Security number and whatnot, on the bottom of page 2, they will have their Federal Reserve routing numbers, their bank account, and whether they wanted a refund in their checking or savings account and that checking or savings account number. All of this information, name, address, Social Security number, bank account information, all of this is seen by the 6 people who actually prepare the return, plus the managers, the supervisors, any outsourced companies that help the outsourcers, any of their subcontractors, the IT department workers, any number of people have access to this private information. Literally 30 minutes after I posted our website, copanion.com, on the Internet, I got an email from an entrepreneur in Chennai, India, who suggested to me that if I was interested, he could get information from inside of the Indian tax office, their equivalent of the IRS. And I called a fellow that I had visited in India and said, "Is this true?" And his response is, "Oh, yeah, I did that 3 years ago. It's really a good way to sell people stuff." A year ago, outsourcers working for Emphasis in India stole $426,000 from Citibank customers. And these crooks didn't have to work too hard to get that money because all they had to do was memorize some bank account information. Inspired by that scandal, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation ran an expose and reported they were able to get individuals' personal information for $10 each. They received names, addresses, phone numbers, birth certificate details, Medicare numbers, driver's license numbers, and ATM card numbers. And the thieves wouldn't give them just one or two. They have a minimum order quantity of 1,000. Outsourcers will tell you that their security is better than ours. They'll tell you that papers and cameras are never allowed in their workrooms. Last July, I visited our first outsourcing company. Within 10 minutes of entering the building, we saw people walking around the offices with paper in their hands. My American host said, "What is this? I told you last time this wasn't supposed to happen again." And the manager of the operation said, "Oh, that doesn't count. That's an IT person, not an accountant with the paper." Then he helped me take this photograph with my camera. My camera was not, or all cameras were banned from the building. And before lunch, when we tried to go online to get our email, we couldn't get online because a virus had taken over the computer network. And I asked, what happens if this virus is sending confidential financial information out over the Internet? And the owner of the business said over and over again, "Don't worry, it's just a technical problem." In this environment, our 1040s are like an exposed wallet waiting to be lifted by career pickpockets. In regards to consents, make a lot of sense. They're easy to understand. They give Americans the right to know who has their confidential information, and they stop outsourcing to foreign countries without the knowledge of American citizens. People ask me, how can you support these regulations when it makes it easier for people to send information, to sell taxpayer information? We don't. We think it's wrong to sell taxpayer information under any circumstances. We agree with the members of Congress who have spoken out against us, with consumer groups, and frankly, everyone we've talked to says you shouldn't sell my information. That when it comes to using, or even worse, selling taxpayers' information, that the regulations either ban such practices outright or at least add the warning in boldface to these consents.